Good morning, LCC kids. Happy Sunday. Thanks for joining us for today's lesson video. Always love the time we get to share together in the story of the Bible and hearing from God. But we're going to jump into our game for today. It's called Siri-oki. If you're like the kids in my house, they always like talking to Siri and listening to Alexa. Maybe you're used to hearing her voice sometimes. Now, if you are familiar with some Disney movies and songs, you might know some of those words. But let's see if you can guess what movie Siri is telling us the words to some of these songs. You're going to hear her, and you shout out from home what Disney movie you think she's singing or wording a song from. Let's go ahead and take it away, Siri.
I've never met someone who thinks so much like me. Jinx, jinx again. Our mental synchronization can have but one explanation.
And as soon as you think you know what movie that is, you can shout out. See how long it takes for you to guess. I'm guessing that most of y'all probably know that is from Frozen. Love is an open door. All right, let's hear another one, Siri.
You must be swift as a coursing river. Be a man, with all the force of a great typhoon. Be a man, with all the strength of the raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of the moon.
Mysterious as the dark side of the moon. Of course, that's from Mulan. I'm guessing you might have known that. I'll make a man out of you. All right, let's do another one.
When the road looks rough ahead, and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said.
And this is a classic, and my mind's already going to the next line. You've got a friend in me from Toy Story. Were you 3 for 3 on those, kids? Well, if not, you're going to have a chance later on to guess at some more Siri-oki songs. But you might have been a little confused here in the way that she talks. She talks kind of like we talk, but also not quite how we talk. And we're going to be taken into some confusing moments that God's people face in our story for today. The title for today's lesson is Walls Come Down. Walls come down. And this is the story of Joshua and Jericho. You might remember we talked about last week that God's people, they've come out of Egypt. They were slaves. God rescued them. God has worked wonders and miracles to take care of his people. And now they've been wandering around in a wilderness for 40 years. But the time has finally come for them to go inside this land that he had promised them. This land that God said was flowing with milk and honey. It's the land of promise. But it's going to come only with a fight, because there are enemies in the land that Israel has to face off with. But they have to trust that God is going to be with them in no matter what they face. And last week we talked about how this woman named Rahab, this unlikely woman, because she was one of the enemies. She wasn't an Israelite. She didn't even have a great reputation for being a good person. And yet she helped the 2 spies that went into Jericho. And they promised they would help her. And she held out that little scarlet cord outside of her window so that she would be saved. And it points to the unlikely way that God saves us through the scarlet blood of Jesus. What do we find out from today's story when Israel faces off with the city of Jericho? Well, the first point to pay attention to is that God's way is not our way. You know, sometimes your parents might do some things you don't understand. They might make some decisions that you don't like. They might tell you to do things that feel confusing to you, or that you feel like, why do I have to? Why do we always? And they might say something, you know, son or daughter, one day I hope you'll understand why this is good for you. And often God does things that we might not first understand. And we see that in this story here. Joshua is now the leader of God's people, and they are outside of the city of Jericho. It's this city that has these walls. It's set up like a fort, and so it's well guarded. How in the world are they going to get in and face off these people in battle? That's certainly the question that's on Joshua's mind in this moment. But then out of nowhere, a man appears. A man that Joshua has never seen before. And he asks him this question. In Joshua chapter 5, verse 13, it says, when Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, are you for us, or are you for our opponents? Are you for the guys that we have to fight? And he said, no, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, what does my Lord say to his servant? And the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. I love what happens in this moment, because Joshua sees this man holding a sword, and he wants to find out, hey, are you here to help us, or are you here to fight against us? And the man answers, no. Are you for us or against us? No, I don't fit in either one of those options. I'm the commander of the army of the Lord. Joshua might scratch his head in that moment and think, I thought that's what my job was. I thought I was the leader here. I thought I was the military guy in this moment. But here he is face to face with someone he realizes is no ordinary man. That's why he bows down and worships. And he's told to take the sandals off his feet. You remember anybody else in the Bible that was told to do that? Right? Joshua's leader who went before him, Moses, when he came up on that burning bush, was told, take the sandals off your feet, for this is holy ground. This is a special place. This is not like everything else that you've ever experienced before, Moses. And here Joshua is being told the same thing. Now, why does it say, are you for us or against us? No, because God's ways are not our ways. And here, Joshua is having a meeting with God himself, God represented in human form. It's such a picture of Jesus. This is before Jesus came. Later on in what's called the incarnation, when he takes on a human body like ours. But here, years and years and centuries before that, God is showing up in human form. And he's teaching Joshua, sometimes you're just caught up in what you think your plan is or the plan of the people who are against you. But my ways are not your ways. God's plan and his purposes are so much bigger than sometimes the little things that get us so worked up. And listen, you can be 7, 8, 9, 10 and get worked up really big over little things. Like whether or not you get to have dessert tonight, whether or not you get to be with the friend you want to see, whether or not you have to do extra homework, and those things can feel so big and so disappointing. And God's doing something so much more in our lives that's about his purpose. And so here right now, God in meeting with Joshua is saying, I know you're thinking really small about this, and you're just worried about the next little battle you have to face. My ways are so much bigger than yours. And the way that we're going to face this battle is different than you ever would think or imagine. And we'll see how that happens in just a moment. But let's see if we can work through some more confusing series situations. Let's go to our next series song together.
Down here all the fish is happy, as off through the waves they roll. The fish on the land ain't happy, they sad cause they in their bowl.
All right, talking about fish, could be Finding Nemo, but don't remember these kinds of songs in those movies. Of course, you know this is from Under the Sea, from The Little Mermaid, right? All right, let's do our next one.
Ain't no passing craze. It means no worries for the rest of your days. It's our problem-free philosophy.
Problem-free philosophy, also known by the phrase Hakuna Matata from The Lion King. Did you get that one? Do you know how to spell Hakuna Matata? Well, there it is on the screen there for you now. All right, one more.
What can I say except you're welcome? For the tides, the sun, the sky. Hey, it's okay, it's okay. You're welcome. I'm just an ordinary demi-guy.
Sounds like somebody who's a little full of himself. It could only be Maui from Moana singing "You're welcome" for all the things that we didn't happen to say thank you about. But he's like, you're welcome anyway. Maybe you got that one too. All right, let's jump back into our Jericho story together. We've seen how God's ways are not our ways. And here's one way that we see that in this story in particular, is that God wins through our weakness. How many of us think that the God of the universe, the God who just said a word and everything showed up and everything was created, needs our help in order to win a battle? Needs us to be really strong, needs us to have really kind of advanced weapons, needs us to have a lot of power and to be big in number. Does God need that? In fact, the only thing God asks us to bring is our weakness, is to bring our trust in His strength and knowing that He will win. And that's how God teaches His people here. He gives them this unusual way to win a victory. He tells Joshua, here's what the people are going to do. They're going to all line up, all 12 tribes, and they are going to march around the city of Jericho. They're just going to march around it once a day for 6 days. And you can guess the people up on the walls in this strong, fortified city, they probably think this is ridiculous. They're maybe throwing tomatoes at the people. They're laughing at them. Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to get past these walls? We've got strength. We've got this fortress here. You guys are little and pathetic, and you're never going to win. I don't know. Maybe they're taunting like that. And they're to march around the wall 7 days. And then they're to bring out all these catapults with huge rocks and knock down the wall. No, that's not what he says next. On the 7th day, they're going to march around it 7 times. And then all the priests in Israel, the leaders of the people, are going to blow their trumpets. And the people are going to shout sounds of praise for God. And the walls came tumbling down when they shouted. Right? They didn't have to throw anything at that wall. They didn't have to knock it down. They just trusted that on day number 7, because God has said so, God has spoken, those bricks are not going to be standing on top of each other any longer. God shows His power. God wins even through our weakness. And so kids, no matter what you face, no matter what trouble you go through, no matter what struggle might be in your future, it's not mainly about how big you are, how strong you are, how good you are, how impressive you are that matters. But where is your trust? Because even when all we have to bring is our weakness, God wins because His ways are not our ways. And that's how these walls came tumbling down. And that's how the walls that we might face will as well. All right, thanks, kids, for visiting with us today. We'll continue these stories next Sunday. Y'all have a great week.